His name is Marsalek, Jan Marsalek, the name of the man sitting in the center of one of the biggest financial scandals in European history. Over years, the chief operating officer of the German fintech company Wirecard, who was said to have a deep admiration for Agent 007 and intelligence, kept up the appearance of an aspiring manager. Only few guessed that there was a web of lies, including fictional assets worth billions of dollars stuck behind the facade of the multi-billion-dollar company, and even less suspected that behind the charismatic facade of Marsalek, who orchestrated the billion-dollar fraud, did not only lie an unscrupulous scammer, but a man who lived a crazy double life. From contacts in the underworld, the divulging of state secrets, adventure holiday with the Russian military, friends in Western as well as in Russian intelligence, over to plans to raise his own private army, Marsalek is a mystery. One of the most wanted mysteries on the globe, because since June the 20th in 2020, Marsalek is wanted with an international arrest warrant for particularly serious infidelity and international gang fraud. Since then, the man of many interests is nearly untraceable. But let's start at the beginning to unravel this James Bond-like story. Marsalek's rise was breathtaking. In 2010, with only 30 years old, he became a board member of Wirecard, and this without a college degree or even graduation from high school. As chief operating officer, he was put in charge of all the company's operations. Wirecard dealt with the processing of online payments and worked its way up from a scruffy company which provided payment methods for pawn sites to one of the few big European players in fintech. Thus, they were competing with giants like Visa and MasterCard for market shares. Or at least that's what it seemed like, because under the direction of Jan Marsalek, Wirecard always generated new record sales. Therefore, especially among German investors, there was a real hype created, and during the time Marsalek was managing the daily business, it seemed like there was only one way: the way up. Thus, since Marsalek took over in 2010, the stock price did far more than 10x, and the company was worth more than a staggering $20 billion in 2018. However, after the board was able to deny first allegations regarding the company's business model and financial fraud, in 2020 the inevitable Big Bang happened. After the Financial Times published an article that precisely described an house of cards consisting of made-up sales, made-up business partners, letterbox companies, and 1.9 billion in made-up assets that were just existing on the balance sheet, this house of cards collapsed in spectacular fashion. Within a few days after the release of the article, the share price crashed, losing 98% of its value, thus pulverizing the billions of investors. While the company's CEO and mentor of Jan Marsalek, Markus Braun, was the face of Wirecard, Marsalek took care of the dirty work in the background, which consisted of far more than just adding zeros on the balance sheet. In contrast to Braun, Marsalek did not turn himself in, but disappeared before an arrest warrant could even be issued. On June 19, 2020, a private jet with Marsalek on board took off from a small airfield close to Vienna, heading to Belarus. He didn't flee with empty hands, but took a 3-digit million amount with him, and a la James Bond, he had several passports with him, including an Uzbeki diplomatic passport. His escape seems to have been planned for a long time. 4 days after his takeoff to Belarus, he was allegedly spotted in Manila on the Philippines. However, shortly after, it turned out that the Filipino officials were bribed to falsely report the entry and exit of Marsalek into the Philippines, in a maneuver to distract the authorities. Although Marsalek stayed untraceable, more and more details about the scammer came to light, and it got clear that he lived a real double life, which was not just about excessive parties on which the bodies of naked women served as sushi tables, but about an elaborately stretched network of intelligence contacts that, in the end, helped Marsalek to escape. To understand who Marsalek really was, thus to look behind the facade of the charismatic manager, it's enough to have a look at the kind of guests he welcomed in his villa in Munich, which is, only coincidentally of course, located right next to the Russian consulate. Either in his villa or optionally in the noble restaurant Cafe, Marsalek met with the big names. Not just ex-politicians like the former French president Nicolas Sarkozy and other greats of European politics, but also spies and secret agents went in and out at Marsalek's place. Thus, Marsalek, who is Austrian himself, was in contact with the Austrian Egisto Ott, who is a former domestic intelligence agent and who was accused to trade with top-secret informations by the CIA as early as 2017. Among others, Egisto Ott allegedly sold state secrets to the Russians. Supposedly, Egisto Ott did also search secret databases on Marsalek's command, for example, to get dirty informations about unpleasant employees. Furthermore, Marsalek supplied the right-wing party of Austria, to which he kept close contact with top-secret informations. Then there is also Martin W., another former Austrian spy and friend of Marsalek, who helped Marsalek to disappear. At least it looks like it, because before Marsalek boarded the private jet on the 19th of June 2020, the two still had the time to have dinner together. So far, this was only the tip of the iceberg, because Marsalek's interests didn't stop at the Austrian border. For this reason, in February 2018, it came to an ominous meeting between guests that Marsalek invited into his Munich villa. Supposedly, Marsalek wanted to talk about his humanitarian plans regarding the civil war-shattered Libya. However, there were not only high-ranking officials and ex-diplomats among the invited men, but also Andrei Zurbriggen, an Arabist and professor at a Moscow university. Zurbriggen's name did not make those present suspicious without reason. In fact, Western intelligence suspects the Russian professor to be a former high-ranking officer of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Agency, GRU, the same agency that has supposedly carried out the 2018 Novichok attack on Sergei Skripal. Coincidentally, Marsalek is associated with the neurotoxin Novichok as well, as he is said to have bragged in front of London brokers to be in possession of the toxin's top-secret formula. But let's dig deeper into Marsalek's dealings in Libya. Already in 2015, he invested money in the North African country. According to his own statements, he has stake in 3 different cement plants that are located in the east of the country, deep inside the domain of General Haftar, who is backed by the Russians. Furthermore, in 2017, heavily armed mercenaries from the Russian RSB group were hired to perform a mine clearance operation in those cement plants. However, as it was reported in local social media, the mercenaries didn't leave after their work was done, but rather the opposite was the case. Russian mercenaries continued to go in and out at those cement plants. Moreover, Marsalek's Russia connections don't stop here. He entered Russia more than 60 times since 2015 alone, often for less than 24 hours and with 9 different passports. On top, in 2017, the former manager bragged in front of friends about his travel through the Syrian desert city Palmyra right after Syrian and Russian forces freed the city from ISIS. Marsalek called the Russian soldiers his boys and supposedly traveled under the protection of the Russian forces. But let's go back to Marsalek's plans for Libya. Unfortunately for Marsalek, some of his guests have spilled tea about the interests Marsalek really pursued in Libya, and those were far from humanitarian. Apparently, Marsalek planned to build up a 15 to 20,000 strong army of mercenaries that would have been armed to the teeth. This probably is also the reason why the former head of the Libyan Secret Service, El Obaidi, has been invited to Marsalek's Munich villa before. One can only speculate about the motives behind Marsalek's ambition to raise his own private army. But what's obvious is that the mercenaries were supposed to control the stream of refugees passing through Libya and to stop them from continuing their path to Europe. But is his desire to build up an army in Libya solely based on personal reasons, like his exaggerated need for security that we know about from some of his intimates? Or, in his role as an upstart, did he just wanted to play in the same league as the big names to gain respect and feel important? Because, as you know from an informer, the only thing that he liked more than to know secrets was to tell people about them. Or is he really in the pay of Russian intelligence agencies? And the effort of building up a mercenary force in Libya was supposed to serve Russian interests? To control the refugee routes is definitely a powerful tool with which one can influence and put pressure on European governments. Additionally, Marsalek himself, as someone sitting in the center of worldwide payment streams, was definitely a person of interest for every intelligence agency. Unfortunately, there is a good chance that all those open questions will never be answered, because even though 2 years have passed since Marsalek's disappearance, like the 1.9 billion at Wirecard, Marsalek seemed to have vanished into thin air, with, according to the most recent information, him hiding on an estate near Moscow under the protection of either the FSB or the GRU.